My friend Mario from Tube Workshop built me the ultimate pissed off Plexi style amplifier with more gain and more balls. This is the Cali Sunrise. Let's dive in. Alright, I hope you enjoyed that demo track with 4 different guitars, 4 different styles. We started off with this guitar, my RHguitars DCO, with the bare knuckle Aftermath pickup in the bridge for a really pissed off sort of rock and metal tone. Then we went to my PRS SC56 for a nice clean tone. Then we switched over to the Infinia Guitars series for an 80s metal, hair metal tone, if you will. And then to an 8-string guitar for a really heavy modern metal tone. For that part, I did use a boost up front, being the Zuta Duality on the modern mode, by the way. For all the tones in this video, the guitars are going through my mini pedal board. I'm just going to use that for the boost, primarily. That's going into the amp. The amp is going into my Grossmann Fatbox 1x12, in which I've loaded up my Celestion Vintage 30 as per usual. Mic'd up with 3 mics, 2 SM57s and 1 MD421 Kompakt, and it sounds absolutely glorious, okay? Yeah, so this is the tone basically that I had dialed up for the first section of the song. Really pissed off tone. Now this amplifier is really sensitive to guitar and pickup changes. So based on the guitar that you're using, the sound is going to be more different with this amplifier than with a lot of other modern amplifiers that tend to be more compressed and saturated. So we're going to try some different guitars in this video. But again, yeah, I just really love how pissed off and angry this guitar sounds with this amplifier. That's why I'm starting with this guitar. I'll switch to something a little bit more traditional in a second. Now, let's talk a little bit about the story behind this amplifier, which is cool. So I've known Mario from Tube Workshop for a couple of years now. He's a really nice guy, and he builds all his amplifiers by hand in his own shop in Germany. Okay, so these are boutique amplifiers. I have another amp of his in the studio, the Lulis, behind here somewhere, which is really awesome. That's kind of like a modded 800 with a built-in boost. Really cool amp. I reviewed that on the channel, of course. And then last year at 42 Gear Street, I got to try his Cali Sunset, which looks like this but in red. And it's basically Mario's take on the modded California Plexi. It's an 18-watt amplifier with 2 EL84s, pretty loud. It's basically a Plexi, a refined and modded Plexi-style amplifier with some mods in it. Let's say Jose-style mods, okay? To add a bit of gain, to add a bit of juice. And I like that. And I tried that amplifier and I really liked it. But then at Guitar Summit, I saw Mario again. I was like, you know what? Why don't we make the Cali Sunrise and have it have more gain, like a special edition or something, just for me, right? I will say that Mario likes this amplifier so much that it's probably going to end up being a production model. If you guys agree, let me know in the comments. And he got to work. So this is many months later, of course, and now we have it here. And, you know, the idea behind the amp evolved a little bit over time, but the idea was to add more gain. Hence, the hotter switch, okay? And then together we also came up with the idea to add a bit of oomph, and he added the pull depth on the presence control over here as well. We'll get into all of that, okay? So that's the backstory behind this wonderful amplifier. And look how cool it looks in this yellow Tolex. I have no other amp in yellow. In fact, I don't think I have had any other amp in yellow. I think it's a really original color and I love it. So when you compare this to the regular Cali Sunset, that you can also just buy at Thomann, by the way. Of course, the Tolex is different and the hot switch is called the hotter switch. And we also have this pull depth, right, that I mentioned. But internally, this is a 40-watt amplifier. It's cathode biased and it has 4 EL84 amps in the power section. And this thing can get whopping loud. So some of you might say, hey, you've got your master volume very low. First of all, that's because I don't play on really crazy levels in Sonic Drive Studio. I don't really need to. This amplifier doesn't need to be cranked in order for it to sound good. This amp has this Wondervolume, okay? It's a special design by Mario, and it works so that even at low levels, it sounds like it's a little bit louder. So it has a really wonderful sound even at low to moderate levels. And as you crank it up, the sound gets a little bit more rolled off in the bottom and top end so that it doesn't hurt your ears too much, okay? But when it's low, there's a little bit of a Fletcher Munchen thing going on just so that it sounds a little bit more lively. And that's a really cool thing. So it does sound great at low levels, moderate levels, but also when you crank it up super loud. Look, the transformers in here are not tiny. You know, they have some punch in them. And trust me, at 40 watts, this thing can get insanely loud. If you put 4 EL84s together, you can get a lot of power. Now, for the other controls, let's start all the way on the left over here. Okay, so we have a couple switches. Usually, with a traditional Plexi style amp, you'll get 4 inputs that you can jumper and stuff, you know, with the normal and bright modes. Mario doesn't really like that concept because there are a lot of options that just don't really sound good. With this amp, we get this one single input and then a bunch of switches that you can use to shape the tone, just as how you would be able to do so with, you know, the jumper cable and everything. So let's demonstrate those switches. So we have a deep switch and a bright switch. First, let me go back to the tone that I've dialed in, which is a high gain tone. I've grabbed another guitar. This is my Edwards LP-CTM, my just as good or even better than Gibson Les Paul. And with this guitar, it sounds a little bit more tame than the other guitar. Since that guitar with the bare knuckle Aftermath has a lot of output and gnarliness, this is a bit more of a balanced sound. Let's take a listen. Right? Still sounds great, but a little bit more tame, perhaps. I'm going to dial down the gain even further to demonstrate these switches for you. Right now, gain is at, let's say, 130 or so. By the way, the hotter and boost switches are on right now. We'll get to those in a minute. So, the bright switch is on right now. This would be as if you're going into the treble channel of a traditional Plexi. So it sounds nice and open and has a bit of those, you know, punchy highs, but without getting too harsh. Sounds cool, right? If we turn that off, it's a bit more tame. Perhaps if you're using very bright single coils, this could be of use to you. Now, if we flick the deep switch on, that's very fat. This is like the normal channel on a traditional Plexi. So the bottom end is a bit thicker and it saturates a little bit more in the bottom end. And deep off. Right, it's a bit more tight with it off, on. And again, off. And let's enable the bright again. Opens it right up, so I really like the bright switch. Let's add deep as well. So with them both on, it's kind of like blending the channels of a traditional Plexi with a jumper cable, okay? If you like to boost your amps with tight pedals and stuff, it could be nice to add the deep because it thickens up the tone a little bit, which could be good to compensate for boost. In fact, let's try that right now. Let me go back to a little bit more gain. That is really thick sounding, right? Okay, I'm gonna add the Zuta duality pedal on the vintage mode, which kind of is like a tube screamer, okay? Let's take a listen. It's still a little bit on the tubby side, so let's turn deep off. That's quite cool, actually. Boost off. Boost on. So that adds a nice kick to the tone, of course. You know, these amps are, you know, they work really well with boost pedals and stuff. But of course, you can also get some really clean and crunchy tones and more nuanced tones out of this amp as well. I just love it with all the juice kicked in. So with the hotter switch and the boost switch, I just love how rich and raw it sounds, you know? With traditional Plexis, I've owned a couple, I never can get it to feel and sound so satisfying for a bit more high gain stuff. So I love this thing a lot. So those are the bright and deep switches. Okay, now let's take a look at the boost and the hotter switches. So again, they're on right now. Let's just turn them both off and see what sort of gain we get. All right, so now we get a more traditional Plexi sound. Really nice, really pleasing, really crunchy, and just sounds really cool, really dialed in, I should say. So everything about this amplifier has been fine-tuned by Mario and customized. So it's not a simple Plexi clone, you know. He did his magic to make it sound and function really nicely, okay? So gain is at 3 o'clock right now. Let's see how clean we can get this amplifier to sound. Let's start again at 12 o'clock for the gain. Again, so this is with bright on. Let's turn it off for a sec. Could work well for bright single coils, but let's leave it on because I love that. Let's go to the neck pickup and lower the gain even further. That's a really nice broken up clean tone. Really beautiful. I tend to like cleans that are a little bit broken up. So that is cool. But let's go back and add some gain. 12 o'clock. Now you should know that this amp has an additional gain stage when compared to a traditional Plexi. So it already has more gain on tap by default. And with the boost switch, you basically get to choose the amount of gain that you add, okay? It also tightens up the bottom end a little bit. Let's see how it sounds, okay? So this is off. And on. Off. On the subtle side, but you can definitely notice it. It tightens it up a little bit and adds a little bit of kick. Let's do that with gain set to around 4 o'clock. So this is on. Off. And on again. Yep. That's cool. Really cool. Let's turn that off and try the harder switch, which is special to this amp, or unique to this amp, I should say. So this is off. And on. Yeah, that adds quite a bit of gain. Off. And on. And then if we combine the two, you get the maximum amount of gain that this amp has to offer. Gain isn't even maxed out. Let's max it out all the way. Love that so much. That is so good in terms of the juice and gain that you have under your fingers. No traditional Plexi style amplifier does this. Now regarding the harder switch, it's basically a Jose inspired thing in the circuit where it adds diode clipping. But it's pre-EQ, so you can really shape the tone still, even with hotter active. Another thing that you'll note is that with this saturation mode, if you will, there's no drop in volume. So with some amplifiers like these, with these Jose modded Marshall style amplifiers, there's a volume drop when you enable the saturation, not with this amp. Let me demonstrate once again. So that's quite clever of Mario. Now let's check out the EQ, because this is not a plain copy of a Marshall tone stack. No. Mario fine-tuned the frequencies and how it sounds and how it reacts, which I really like as well. So let's start with the bass control and see how that affects the tone. And right now it's at 11 o'clock. Of course, it's kind of thin with it all the way off. So you can really add some thick bottom end with that bass control, which is cool. Let's do the mid control. I really like the frequency where the mid control sits, so that's really cool as well. Let's do the treble control. So even with the treble cranked up a little bit, it still sounds natural. That is cool, right? Of course, we also have a presence control, which is way more effective than a presence control in a traditional Plexi. Let's take a listen. Yeah, so there's a lot of juice on tap there, which again, I really like. Now, let's take a look at the pull depth. So initially, I said to Mario, why don't we do a resonance control for extra control over the low end? And at first he was like, I don't know. But now he added the pull depth. Since we have more headroom in the power amp, it works really well. Let me demonstrate to you how that sounds. So I've had it on for the entire time right now. For the demo track, I had it off at least during the 80s metal section. Let's turn it off and see how the low end sounds with it off. That's a nice and tight, more traditional low end, okay? But I like a really thick bottom end. So let's turn it on. Oh yeah, I love that big booty that it adds to the tone. Really cool. And then of course we have the Wondervolume control. So a simple amplifier, but very effective. We also have an effects loop on the back, which is super high quality. Now I want to try a couple more guitars just to show you how the sound of this amplifier changes according to the guitar change, okay? So this is my Schecter PT Black Ops with the Fishman Fluence Modern open core in the bridge. This guitar is tuned to drop C. And with this guitar, especially on the active voicing, the amp is going to sound quite different. Let's take a listen. Let me add a little bit of bass. And here we go. Especially on the active mode, you can really hear that mid hump coming through a lot. With a lot of modern amps, since they are so high gain and compressed, which I also really love, those differences tend to be a little bit less dramatic. Okay, so again, this is with the active voicing. Let's go to the passive voicing. It's a bit more thick in the bottom end. For this tone, actually, I would crank the treble up a little bit. Maybe also the presence. Let's try the boost once again on the vintage mode. So the Zuta duality. Let's back off the mids a little bit, back off the low end, add a little bit more treble. So yeah, with a good boost, you can make this amp sound quite modern indeed. Let's take that one step further. So of course, for a yellow amp, you need to use a yellow guitar. So this is my ESP LTD Stephen Carpenter SC608B 8-string baritone. I also use that in the intro, of course. Right now, the Fishman is set to the passive voicing, so it sounds more like a guitar with a passive pickup. Let's see how this guitar sounds without a boost up front, okay? So even without a boost, it sounds pretty decent, right? And that's, for an 8-string guitar, especially for a Plexi style amplifier, really impressive, because a normal Plexi is going to fart all over the place. It's not going to sound good with an 8-string guitar. Now let's start adding the boosts. Let's start with the vintage voicing. That sounds really mean, right? However, we can get even meaner by using the modern mode on the Zuda Duality. Wow, that sounds super gnarly. The sound gets a little bit more noisy because it's like a really aggressive sound, but I love it a lot. So there you have it. That is the Tube Workshop Cali Sunrise. I love it. Mario, thank you so much for building me this amplifier. It's super impressive. It's super fun. And I definitely hope you'll make this into a production run. It's so cool. I love the extra gain. I love how it's voiced. I love the yellow toe legs. There's nothing not to love. So it's really impressive. And guys, if you get the chance, definitely check this out. Also, go to Guitar Summit because Mario will be there. And you can check out, hopefully, one of these amps for yourself, okay? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Please also hit the like and subscribe buttons, as that really helps the channel out. I'd really appreciate it. And you can follow Sonic Drive Studio on Facebook and Instagram, of course. Check out my website. And I hope you have a wonderful day. Cheers, guys.